Hey everyone, and welcome to Fact Universe. We hope you're doing great. This is the podcast where we dive into facts and information available in the public domain sourced from credible media outlets and other trusted sources. Let's get started.
Welcome everyone. Today we're doing a really essential deep dive. We're going to unpack one of the biggest geopolitical shifts we've seen in decades. The active war between Israel and Iran that really kicked off around June 13th, 2025. Our mission today really is to dig into the sources, pull out the most important pieces of knowledge, the key insights, so you can get a handle on this unprecedented conflict quickly. Because look, this isn't the proxy stuff, the shower boxing we've watched for years. No, this is direct, open military confrontation between two major regional powers. And now, crucially, the United States is involved. It's completely changed the regional power balance. So our goal, break down what happened, why it matters so much, and what might be coming next.
Yeah, it's an incredibly timely topic and definitely crucial to understand right now. And grasping it means, well, pulling together a lot of complex information pretty fast. You know, from the immediate sparks to the really far-reaching global impacts. We want to give you that full picture, but keep it digestible. Avoid just overwhelming you with data.
Okay, so let's dive right in. What was the immediate trigger? What finally ignited this direct fight after all those decades of, indirect conflict?
Right. Well, the immediate spark, it really flared up on June 12th, 2025. That's when the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, they put out this finding. An unprecedented one, actually. It said Iran wasn't complying with nuclear agreements. And this landed, precisely as President Trump's 60-day nuclear deadline expired. Talk about timing.
Wow.
But to really get the context, you need to look a bit deeper. Our sources point out that through 2024, Iran's usual proxies, think Hezbollah, Hamas, various militias in Iraq, they'd been hit hard, weakened quite a bit in earlier conflicts. So this left both Iran and Israel kind of exposed, Direct confrontation became, well, more likely because that asymmetric buffer, that proxy advantage, it just wasn't really there like before.
And that's the really profound part, isn't it? The sources highlight this. This is genuinely historic, a new chapter.
Oh, absolutely. It's the first direct military clash between Israel and Iran since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Think about that. Over 40 years of fighting through others. And that era, the sources are clear, it just ended. It's a total game changer for the region's security.
So given that massive shift, that change in the whole landscape, how did Israel respond? Right after the IAEA report and that deadline passing, what was the immediate action?
Israel moved fast and decisively. Dawn on June 13th, they launched Operation Rising Lion. And by all accounts, this was huge. The largest military operation in Israeli history aimed directly at Iranian soil.
The largest ever.
That's what the sources indicate. The scale was just staggering. Over 200 Israeli jets, including their advanced F-35Is, that's their modified stealth fighter, dropping more than 330 munitions. They hit about 100 targets inside Iran. And sources stress this wasn't just symbolic, it was systematic, aimed at crippling key Iranian capabilities.
And the impact on Iran, the report suggests it was just devastating.
Devastating is the right word. Profoundly so. The operation apparently wiped out Iran's above-ground nuclear enrichment capability at Natanz. That's a critical site. But maybe even more critical, it essentially decapitated the entire top level of Iran's military leadership in one day.
The whole top tier?
Yes. Hossein Salami, the IRGC commander-in-chief.
Oh.
Mohammad Bagheri, the Armed Forces chief. Amir Ali Hajizadeh, the head of the IRGC's Aerospace Force. All reported killed, plus 14 nuclear scientists, including Faridun Abbasi, a former head of their atomic energy organization, also killed.
Incredible.
So this wasn't just tactical. It was a catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge, nuclear expertise for Iran. It'll take years, maybe even decades to rebuild that. It's a strategic blow that could resonate for a very long time.
Wow. Okay, so a strike that decisive, it obviously demands a reaction. What was Iran's counter? How big was the retaliation?
Iran responded within hours. They called it Operation True Promise III. Now, the name might sound familiar, referencing earlier, more limited strikes, but this was anything but limited. Since June 13th, the reports say over 1,000 projectiles fired at Israel. We're talking hypersonic missiles, incredibly fast, hard to intercept, and medium-range ballistic missiles. And they're targeting major population centers, Tel Aviv, Haifa, other key spots.
1,000 projectiles.
That's the figure reported. And historically, this is the first time since 1979 we've seen sustained direct attacks on the Israeli homeland like this. It's a dramatic jump from anything before.
And there was that one incident, June 19th, that really seemed to grab international attention, highlighting just how bad this was getting.
Ah, yes. The strike on Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba. An Iranian ballistic missile hit the hospital directly. And the indications are this wasn't collateral damage. Sources suggest it was deliberate, targeting hospital infrastructure.
A hospital?
And they use cluster munitions. That's a weapon that releases smaller bombs over an area designed for widespread damage. Now, the surgical wing was apparently evacuated, but still, 71 people injured. The hospital had to close to new patients, basically, unless it was life or death.
That feels like crossing a line.
It's seen as a grave escalation, absolutely, targeting medical facilities. And it led Israel to openly threaten holding Iran's supreme leader personally accountable, calling it war crimes.
Okay, so Israel strikes, Iran retaliates, hitting civilian areas, even a hospital. And then the conflict takes another massive turn. How did the U.S. get directly involved? This changed everything, right?
This is where the whole picture shifts dramatically. June 21st. So just yesterday, based on the sources we have, President Trump authorized direct U.S. military strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities.
Direct U.S. strikes. Okay. What did that look like?
Pretty significant actions. American B-2 stealth bombers used those massive 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. They hit the Fordo enrichment facility, which is buried deep underground, heavily fortified, thought to be almost impenetrable before this. And it's reported the first time these massive conventional bombs have been used in combat.
Bunker busters on Fordo.
Exactly. Plus, U.S. submarines launched Tomahawk cruise missiles at Isfahan, another key nuclear tech center. More strikes hit Natanz, too. President Trump himself came out and declared Iran's nuclear facilities completely and totally obliterated. Strong words.
That is a monumental shift. The U.S. military directly striking Iran. How did the region react to that?
Well, it blew the conflict wide open, right? It's not just bilateral anymore. As you'd expect, Iranian-aligned groups across the region reacted immediately. Iraqi militias started threatening U.S. bases, even calling them duck hunting grounds, which is pretty provocative language. And down in Yemen, the Houthis declared the U.S. strikes a declaration of war. So the ripple effects are immediate and significant. It's a much bigger arena now.
Amidst all this military action, these huge geopolitical moves, we have to talk about the human cost. What are the sources telling us about casualties, about the impact on ordinary people?
Yeah, it's crucial not to lose sight of that. The numbers are, frankly, staggering.
Yeah.
And climbing for Iran, depending on the source, estimates range from 430 up to maybe 639 deaths. And the reports say over 90% of those are civilians. The human rights activist news agency has the highest figure, 639 killed.
Over 90% civilians.
That's what's being reported. On the Israeli side, 24 or 25 confirmed deaths and over 1,200 injured, 1,272 specifically. But beyond the numbers, there's this massive evacuation happening in Tehran, hundreds of thousands trying to flee the capital, fuel shortages, traffic jam for hours. It shows this unprecedented fear among Iranian civilians. They're facing direct military attacks in a way they haven't for decades.
And the impact inside Israel, too, from Iran's retaliation, it's been severe for civilians there as well.
Absolutely. The deadliest single event for Israeli civilians seems to have been June 15th in Bat Yam. 8 people killed there and 3 were children.
Yeah.
It's just, it's vital to remember, like you said, these aren't just stats. These are families destroyed, lives turned upside down, hundreds of thousands fleeing their homes. That's immense human suffering unfolding daily.
So let's talk about the nuclear program itself. Diplomacy failed for years to stop it. Did these military strikes actually succeed where talks failed? What's the status of Iran's nuclear capabilities now, according to the sources?
Well, in the immediate sense, yes. The strikes seem to have achieved essentially the virtual destruction of Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities. We're seeing satellite imagery confirming Natanz's above-ground facilities are gone, Isfahan's nuclear tech center heavily damaged, and significantly, they seem to have successfully hit that buried Fordo facility. The IAEA director, Rafael Grossi, his assessment was that Iranian enrichment capacity is severely damaged, if not destroyed altogether. That's a huge statement. It represents really the most significant setback Iran's nuclear program has faced since it began.
Okay, but you often hear about unintended consequences. Is there a risk here? A paradox, maybe? Like the immediate threat is gone, but what about the long term?
That is the critical paradox, exactly. While Iran's immediate path to a weapon seems blocked, these attacks could actually end up strengthening Tehran's long-term desire for nuclear weapons. It gives them a powerful justification, Once they rebuild, they can point to this and say, see, we need a deterrent. Plus, the complete collapse of diplomacy, it just slams the door on peaceful solutions.
Okay.
So, yeah, the irony is stark. These strikes might have crippled the program now, but they might have cemented Iran's nuclear ambitions for the future.
Diplomacy seems completely sidelined by the fighting. What's the status there? Any hope for talks? And how is this whole thing reshaping the wider Middle East?
Diplomacy, yeah, by all accounts, it's completely failed. Intensive efforts, Gulf states, Europeans, the UN, nothing's gained traction. No ceasefire talks are happening. The sticking points are huge. Iran says it won't negotiate while under fire. They demand Israel stops attacking first. Israel, meanwhile, is demanding the complete dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program. That's a bold red line for Tehran, as they put it.
So complete non-starters on both sides.
Pretty much. There was an attempt June 20th in Geneva. EU officials met with Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araki, but it fell apart. Iran insisted on keeping enrichment rights. And President Trump's rhetoric shifting from, maybe offering talks to demanding unconditional surrender, well, that signals the end of that road for now.
Right. And beyond diplomacy, what other regional shifts are we seeing? Anything unexpected?
Well, one really fascinating thing is Hezbollah. Traditionally, Iran's most powerful proxy, right? They've been surprisingly quiet, mostly on the sidelines. And this really shows how those earlier Israeli operations in 2024 were effective. They seriously damaged Hezbollah's capabilities, leaving Iran without its strongest asymmetric partner in this fight.
Interesting. So Iran is more isolated militarily in this direct conflict.
It seems that way. Economically, of course, there are big ripples. Oil markets are jumpy. Brent crude rallied 7%. There's talk of $100 plus oil. If Iran tries to close the Strait of Hormuz, that's huge. 20% of global oil goes through there. Airlines are canceling flights. Shipping companies are avoiding the area. And maybe most concerning long term, this targeting of nuclear facilities sets a dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
Other countries might look at this and think, maybe preemptive strikes are better than diplomacy. That could make the whole region much more volatile.
Looking ahead then, where does this go? Is this likely to be a long, drawn-out conflict, or is there still a real risk of it exploding into something even bigger, a wider regional war?
The current path, unfortunately, points towards prolonged conflict. Iran has vowed more retaliation for the U.S. strikes. Israel's keeping up the pressure. Diplomacy is dead in the water. All the signs point to this grinding on, unless there's some major shift from the big players. And if you step back, this is arguably the biggest Middle East crisis since the 79 Iranian Revolution. You've got direct Israel-Iran war for the first time, the U.S. directly involved, diplomacy collapsed. How this plays out or doesn't resolve will shape the region for decades.
So what are the key things we and you, the listener, should be watching for? What might push this over the edge into that broader war? Absolutely.
A few key things. Does Hezbollah eventually get fully drawn in? That's a major wild card.
Yeah.
How do other big regional players react? Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Turkey. What are their moves? The potential for this to spiral, to pull in more actors. Yeah, that danger is very, very real right now.
This deep dive has really shown us how quickly decades of shadow warfare can erupt into direct, devastating conflict involving major global powers, completely rewriting the rules of engagement. Considering this rapid and unprecedented escalation and the apparent inadequacy of traditional diplomatic channels, what new international mechanisms or strategies do you think might be necessary to de-escalate or even prevent such swift transformations of regional tensions into full-blown war in the future? That wraps up today's episode of Fact Universe. What are your thoughts on what we discussed today? We'd love to hear your opinions. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed it. Your feedback means a lot and helps us keep improving. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the podcast and help us grow. See you next time.